Hello everyone, welcome to tonight's episode. I will be diving into this concept called Ring of the Absent Heaven, a model on the dimensions of this universe that I have come up with. And tonight I managed to see an extended branch to this idea of Ring of the Absent Heaven. You see, we are creatures. We are creatures that open our eyes in a world. Now, we have to get indoctrinated into a familiarity with the world. To be honest, everybody is a stranger to the world when they enter it. This world is designed to be a stranger first, but as you live through it, as you trust it, its mind opens. So as a human being on this rock in the middle of nowhere, I looked at the dimensions of reality and I noticed that we developed language. That we as creatures, just like discovering fire, and that became significant in our attention, we also discovered an ability to simultaneously see a subject and object as the same. So whenever a human being speaks about the dimensions of their world, they're speaking about the relationship of subjects and objects together, but mainly a focus on the objective position. So the ring of the ring of the absent heaven is this idea where I sat down and I wanted to figure out a dimensional relationship, a relationship of the dimensions from my own inner realms. And I managed to come up with something that I have seen no one come up with so far. And the Voidverse, Universe, Dualiverse, Infiniverse, these are relevant to that, and I'm going to explain to you. So first, the ring of the absent heaven. This is a personal idea I've projected, I've brought forth. So I'm trying to think how I can explain it. So think of it this way. Imagine there's a ring on your finger, and this ring is divided into 4 parts. Okay? One part of it, let us say it is the 0 dimension. Let me write these down so it becomes easier for the... So we have what I call the 0 dimension. Alright, so I guess I need to dive into the explanation of it right away. Okay. So, imagine the whole universe. Imagine we as creatures experiencing reality and dimensions. One human being has managed to divide all the dimensions of reality into 4 relationships, 4 dimensions. So, I have found, in some sense, 4 significant ways to look at this universe, but the thing about it being a ring of the absent heaven is that we're actually spiraling. Something we haven't thought is that the dimensions of this realm could have seasonal influence. That means we're under the impression that the laws of nature are fixed. We're sitting on this earth making constants and not letting the world change too much in our eyes. But what if how a dimension and how a creature in a dimension came across had to do with the seasonal dimensional shift? What if it wasn't just man who was evolving and changing the world with his eyes as he changed, but what if the world was evolving and changed man's eyes as it changed? 4 dimensions: the 0 dimension, the 1 dimension, the 2 dimension, and the infinite dimension, and the cycle repeats. So I'm going to write it here. This is very crucial, guys. When I speak about the pilots of consciousness, when I speak about navigating in the inner realms, anybody who understands what I'm explaining here, you should have a very clear comfort with both your outer realms and inner realms. This clears it up. In this episode, I'm explaining the difference between these 4 types of universe that we are spiraling through. We're spiraling through them, you know. So I can tell you these are dimensional seasons. Or you can say types of universes, but they're in phases. So we have the 0 dimension, we have the 1 dimension. Just to make it simple, guys, I use the mathematical language so everybody in the world can pretty much figure this. The second dimension, the 2 dimension, and then I don't know how to do an infinity symbol. How do you do an infinity symbol here? Where's the infinity symbol on the keyboard? Alright guys, I found the infinity symbol. There we go. These 4 are very crucial. They're the point of it. Now you can totally see what I mean by the Voidverse, Universe, Dualiverse, Infiniverse, and I've also created the terms the inner verse and the outer verse. Now the inner verse has to do with the 0 dimension. The outer verse has to do with the 2 dimension. Where we find ourselves as individual is the 1 dimension. Right now, our body appears to us as if it's in 1 dimension. It's one material body, yay. You know, but then when we look at our mind, we see chaos and order. We notice not just matter, we notice space and matter, you know. The Voidverse, the 0 dimension, it is space. The singular dimension is the first phenomena in space where identity is born. We think it is just epigenetical. We think that we're born and we're just conditioned into behavior, even though that is the case. But I feel that behavior has different depths of memory. So what that means is there's behaviors that one can recognize a pattern, and then there are behaviors where one can recognize the beginning of the pattern, but the ending is completely different. So all those people who, to me, they say they're interested in past lives, they're interested in the beginning of their intelligence. Those people who are interested in the afterlife or future lives, they're interested in the aftermath of in the ending of their intelligence. You see, everything has a beginning, middle, and an end. We can't see the beginning of our civilization, but we have history books. We are in the middle right now, here and now, you know. And then there's the future that is left unknown. So technically, life appears as a dream because we don't know what happened in the very beginning. We can't know what happened in the very beginning, and we can't know what happened in happens at the very end. You know, we seem to be tourists in a world that is going to go on existing much longer than us. You know, so we are experiential tourists in manifestation. Now, as a tourist, you go to a new place. What happens? You look around. You look at the dimensions. You look at reality. So you can say the ring of the absent heaven is the model of one tourist in this dimension. Now, this whole episode, by the way, anybody who's disinterested, this whole episode is dedicated to the concept of me looking into the dimension, how the dimensions of this experience of this existence are positioned. You know, first there is space, then there is singular identification of matter in space. So you can say matter is experiencing space, that's a dimension. We can say there is a dimension that the dualistic being feels singular. The dualistic being. That means what happens after let me make this simpler. Let's say we have a being evolving through these dimensions. First, the being is getting comfortable with the space of a world. Then the being is getting comfortable being an individual in the world. Then the being, upon being an individual, realizes other individuals. 1 plus 1 equals 2. We notice different, suddenly there's more factors. The more minds in the room, the more access is added to the meaning of the moment. So we go to the 2 dimension. Right now, everything is dualistic. Anybody who has a desire, anybody who is trying to be good, or anybody who's trying to be bad, this is all the Dualiverse. Okay, language is in the Dualiverse. I was thinking calling it Dualverse. I thought Dualiverse is like we have Universe, Dualiverse might work, So the Dualiverse is noticing chaos and order, pretty much the yin-yang symbol. So the yin-yang symbol gets you to the 2nd dimension, technically. The 0 dimension is the circle. The 1 dimension is the emergence of, you can say, I'm trying to think if there's 2 0 1 dimensions that make up 2. So duality, is duality 2 dimensions or 1, technically? I would say, let's say duality is 3 dimensions. It's 0, 1 are 2 sides of the triangle, let's say inverted triangle, and then we have duality. Anyways, after we're individuals, we go around people. We're social creatures. We're creatures that are naturally moved towards where we can communicate, or where our communication can be identified or been seen. It's like we are human beings, it is true, but to be a human mind, you have to engage and be engaged, actually. And the civilization, the system, it is not perfect. Because it's an imperfect system, it's very easy to hate an imperfect system, What that means is the civilization is like a teacher. Everybody, all the members of the civilization are students in the classroom, but the teacher isn't teaching anything. The teacher's just chilling, or the teacher is like fainting out of thirst or world hunger, There is something I know, that in any moment of life I see weakness, whether in myself or others. I know that after you see one side of the coin, only the other side of the coin is left. So most likely, if every person, if you suffer, joy is your teaching. If you find joy, then you must go through a phase of suffering before you attain another dimensional joy. So you can say sorrow in one dimension can be joy in another. You can say the sorrow of 2 dimensions can be wielded by the joy of 1, welded by the joy of 1, connected. So we acknowledge space as creatures. We acknowledge singular phenomena, matter in this space. We acknowledge the space and matter simultaneously. All philosophies require this relationship between the known and the unknown, the visible or the invisible, whatever you like to call it. It's just an axis. So we get to the 2nd dimension. Now, what is the path up the 2nd dimension? Here I have to open the context of the mystic. Why? Because this is really where culture from the 2 dimension going on to the infinite dimension, and something, if you realize at the end of the title, I say the Voidverse, the universe, the Dualiverse, the Infiniverse, and back. That means it's like a spiral. After infinity, we go back into the void. So the purpose of the void is singular. The purpose of the singular is dual. The purpose of the dual is infinite. The purpose of the infinite is void. That means infinity is sandwiched between a void dimension and a dualistic dimension. Infinity. And when we look at the singular dimension, all those people who are in oneness and non-duality, or sorry, not non-duality, but I'll tell you in a sort of oneness, the love of God, or let's all hold hands and sing till the end of time, like all that is in the 1 dimension. It's when we are seeing everybody is allowed, everybody is existentially equal, but depending on the experience, it's different. So you can't go to someone and be like, hey, I exist more than you, ha 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 ha. Like you can't. you can't you know what I mean. You can't compare existence. We're all existing. It doesn't matter good, bad. That's another dimension. That's a dualistic dimension, a layer added upon it. You know. So the dualistic dimension, why I said I need to add in a sort of cultural reference, is because we are finding people on the planet currently that they are noticing the dualistic dimension, and the dualistic dimension is where there is suffering. You cannot suffer if there isn't a self or a world. That means if this has to be the case. There has to be a self to experience the world's influence, and there has to be a world for the self to be in. So suffering requires self and world. Anytime you get rid of self or world, the suffering doesn't seem to be there. Okay, as a sort of subconscious rationale. So what that means is this is what's happening when a person can't advance their self. They go and advance their world. What happens when you get to a door that's closed? You try to open it. Okay? If you can't open it, you return, or you try to, somehow open it, find the key or whatever. So, what I'm saying is, as I am speaking to you, the witness within is like the zero dimension. My physical body is the singular dimension, the first self, physical self that's required before we can even notice the physical world. And as this self has gone through an objective evolution where it became unconscious, an unconscious self, that means we were like a creature with a body that was roaming, crawling the earth without any mind for a while. It's just like limbs moving, just energy expressed with no direction, no consciousness. Consciousness, you could see it's energy that has found a way to reflect off itself. That's how I would define consciousness. There's definitely something mirror-like going on with how we perceive others and how we perceive self. It's as if when you look at others, you're seeing based on the experiences yourself has been through, But when you perceive how others see you, that is also limited to the experiences you have been through. That means nobody can know ever another person's judgment on them. And if they did, 100% like the way you're saying it, they would not be them. So it's impossible technically to understand each other. I would say understanding doesn't mean per se everybody is seeing the same thing. I would say understanding means we're standing under the same thing. And we can notice it. I've spoken to people who metaphysics for them is very different. They see a separation between metaphysics and physics. As if physics is trying to understand why the space is here. Metaphysics is trying to comprehend why the space is here as intelligence. And you can say physics is here to comprehend why matter is here as intelligence. That means when we want to study the biological program, physics, it's so important to know the physical constitution of the world, And the physical constitution of the world is actually limited to chemistry. That means chemists are actually looking at some physics and it's like, buddy, you don't see what I see. It's all about the constitution of the phenomena we see. Imagine there's a machine. We don't know what this machine is. Okay, or imagine a machine back in the day. Okay, I'll give you an example. Imagine somebody goes back in the past with a time travel machine. Let's say we take like, I don't know, a gaming console, and we go like 1,000 years in the past and we just leave it on the street. Okay, or we leave it in front of the I don't know, like somewhere important. We're going to see different people come up to that machine, attempt to use it, and some are going to be capable, some are not. Some are going to be lucky, some are going to be unlucky. Some are going to press the right thing, right buttons. Some are not going to press the right buttons. Because that is really free will. You're pressing buttons as a mind in a manifest realm. What is free will? What's the point of having free will, if we cannot notice something more than matter? I mean, for me, materialism is the death of free will. Materialism is the fastest way to actually to consider that you are a hallucination here, an electromagnetic hallucination of, deeper unintelligent laws of the universe. You see, let us say there's people now, they look at the physics of reality and they're like, oh man, I'm suffering. It's like, what the F, where am I? What world am I in? What is this place? Guys, I've never taught in a university, but if I ever was teaching a philosophy class, I would just come into the class and I would start shouting, what is going on? What is going on? Just shouting, like loud. What's happening? Just shouting. And the students are going to be imagining the classroom, in the university classroom, it's like, what's going on? What's wrong with this teacher? And after it's settled and after the performance is done, I'll be like, that's what philosophy is about. That's all of philosophy. What is going on? If you can say when you're at a house party and there's something going on, you don't know, you're a philosopher technically in that moment. You are wandering about the further dimensions of how the mind is extracting meaning from the moment. So, some people, they don't like duality. Duality has two exits, the infinite and the singular void. The infinite void or the singular void. That means in this life there is a void. You cannot avoid the zero dimension. It's as if space was in the room before matter was. So technically we should identify more earlier than space. That means if somebody says you're a materialistic being, and if you're considering you're beyond a materialistic being, it's a suggestion that it's like before we identify with the matter in the room, we're identifying with space being the potential of the room. So the space can't be a room. So we can't comprehend space. How in, for example, classical physics, you can say the universe was seen as a sort of engine or a sort of container we can't see the edge of. We can see the edge of our planet, but we cannot see the edge of our universe. That technically renders the edge of the universe the edge of our vision on the planet. This is why when we made satellites, when we had the Hubble telescope noticed background radiation, it was like, you can say it was an extension of the vision of the dimension from the limited perception, from limitations of perception. So people, we are identity. If you are living as an individual on this planet, as a subject that is free willingly moving an objective self in an objective world, or you can say the world is more subjective and objective. It's as if like, until you light the lantern, there is no light. There is no light until you light the lantern. We cannot be aware of the void. We cannot be aware we're dualistic until we're aware how we were singular in the void. And that's in regards to the past. So you can say traditional mysticism, traditional Zen, all these mystic traditions and wisdom traditions, their aim has been to get, the way they are using an algorithm to get rid of suffering is that they are saying, all right, suffering is chaos and order being never ending, like the cycle of karma. Pretty much karma is chaos and order's dance. It's like this unending dance. It's an event that's going on here. Things suddenly break, and you can say things suddenly come together. They break, they come together, you know. Technically, existence and non-existence, and how it's like a dolphin. You know, the intelligence of the universe is like a dolphin. It jumps up the water as a manifest being, jumps down into the water as a, totally different dimensional acknowledgement. So, if you're someone who is suffering because of duality, because of being in a dimension where there is Purusha and Prakriti simultaneity, that means you're space and matter. The old school algorithm, everything is one. The oneness is witnessing duality. The witness is beyond the void, the infiniverse, is beyond the voidverse and the universe. That's traditional. From the Dualiverse, they take you to the universe. From the universe, they take you to the Voidverse. In the Voidverse, there is nothing to believe. There is no truth. There is no truth seeker. There is what I would like to say at most empty seeing. There is sight in knowing itself as just like how you know yourself as how certain you are you're a physical biological being. With that same knowing, you can say a poetically invisible witnessing viewer is found in space. So technically, space is a body for what back in the day some people would call soul. Space is a body. Space is there's something using space before using a singular point of form as intelligence. So from the Dualiverse, tradition takes you to the universe, the Voidverse. Now I am here, and I noticed that mysticism missed out on one thing. They missed out on the future. That means you can say all notions of mysticism so far on the planet are past mysticism. Future mysticism is this algorithm for it. I'm using it as saying, like, I pretty much looked at Vedic thought, and I'm like, all right, what are these guys saying this notion of enlightenment is? Like, on a serious level, I wondered about it, like a designer, like somebody examining an engine. So pretty much I looked at the Upanishads like I was examining an engine. If we are silent in stillness, or like, for example, the Diamond Sutra, let's take a Zen angle. In the Diamond Sutra, they say, keep your mind alive and free without abiding in anywhere or anything. That means realize you are in the Voidverse first, then you are in the universe, or even after, and then you're in the Dualiverse. So you can say mysticism, old school mysticism, is trying to reverse engineer your suffering back into the void where you were ultimate will. So technically the end of the mystic is what he was before the beginning. Now, I'm saying if the yogis, if all these enlightened gurus, all these, smiles of heaven, heavenly dimensions are, in this plane, all these yogis and gurus, they're like, be still, be silent, be quiet. The truth is not in words. The truth is in silence. It's a silent experience. It's not a conceptual visible movement. That's the whole mystical angle. They're trying to make the ripples on the pond settle. So if I thought to myself from a designer's perspective, what does that mean? That means if there is a sort of ability to get the ultimate experience through inaction, through the absence of action, through stillness and silence, if stillness and silence are a portal to the ultimate reality, I ask myself, why isn't advanced noise and communication a portal? Why are we just getting enlightened by the silence of our realm? And that was when I realized the notion of the advanced communicator. You know, sometimes there are inner realm events that I experience that the only way I can fully resolve that meaning of the experience is to create a concept, to name it. You know, when you name something, you're technically giving it order out of the void, meaning out of a meaninglessness, you know? So, my view, Mr. Within's view, what I feel the future generations, what I feel children are being born in the future, are going to be born in the future where they already are subconsciously playing out these algorithms, you know? And what is it? It's you can, as you take your communication, as you as a dualistic being attempt to communicate beyond time through an infinite context, you also see the ultimate reality. It's faster. It's a detour. I'm saying that we went towards the void through we found the Voidverse. You know, even from duality, we reverse engineered back into the void. Now, Mr. Within is saying, instead of reducing, instead of us renouncing the world and not being part of society and going and living in the mountains, instead, I'm saying the opposite. We amplify the dualism, but not externally, not in the outer verse. Or let me say it like this. Every dimension you see here, the Voidverse, Universe, Dualiverse, Infiniverse, and back, the four dimensions, ring of the absent heaven, I want you to think as if this is from a horizontal dimension. Let us say we have sorry, I'll say that again. From a vertical dimension, we have the Voidverse, Universe, Dualiverse, Infiniverse, and them repeating in a spiral manner. From a horizontal dimension, imagine like an X or a plus sign. From a horizontal dimension, it is just innerverse, outerverse, I would say. At least that's how it's coming across from the Dualiverse. And the cool thing about the word universe, uni means one, and a verse is a realm. So universe means one realm. Voidverse means no realms. Dualiverse means two realms. Infiniverse means when you amplify, the moment you have duality, I remember I created this sentence in a talk just for the idea of the ring of the absent heaven, that singularity is the mother of duality. Duality is the father of infinity. Infinity is the mother of the void. And the void is the father of the singular. And the singular is one. The guy in mind is one. Yeah, it works. The model works, guys. I'm telling you, this this episode is a bit more abstract than usual, guys, so just bear with me, you know. But I'm just suggesting that we treat, like, here's the thing. I could say the scientific model, all the glory, when you see a scientist trying to inspire the future generations towards science, they say, look at the wonders and the mysteries of the universe. Look at the mysteries of astrophysics, right? But they speak about it as if it's one universe. That means even if there is multidimensional parallel realm theory possible, we are speaking as if we're in one room. Now, Mr. Within is saying, remember, let's see it as if it's multiple rooms. Honk says, beyond time isn't reached by thinking, but by removing thought and misconceptions. All the void, infinity, inner, outerverse are all dependent on you, the consciousness that is doing. Who is the beer? No, not necessarily. No. That's why it's a new model. That's why I'm telling you, you have hugged Zen masters for too long, Honk. You know, you know, because when you actually enter non-duality and you get out of it, your knees hurt. That's the thing about non-duality. The pain is experienced long-term rather than short-term. You know, there's an opportunity cost to everything. All the time that the person thinks they are everything or consciousness is everything, it's all those moments you're missing out on consciousness being in the Dualiverse. The Infiniverse is something we have not seen. We have seen. So anyways, even if there's a comparison of the old traditional algorithm of returning to the singular void or the modern algorithm as I'm proposing here of going through the infinite void, infinity is inconceivable. Right now, if something moves at the speed of light, it will not be conceivable to us. So let's see the concept of infinity as the evolution of duality. Let us not fear infinity. We have feared infinity. And the reason we have feared it is because it has been introduced to us as a loop. That means when you look at infinity, you find, for example, the notion of what I call a hollow infinity, where I remember as a kid, I stood between two mirrors and I saw endless reflections, right? But I visually saw. That means I was seeing it. I could believe it. I could believe that there were endless parallel realities of me in the mirror. There is the notion of infinity, for example, in Dante's Inferno. Many people don't know this, but the view of hell, the imagery for it comes from Dante Alighieri, this Italian poet who drew 7 levels of heaven and 7 levels of hell, right? And he created this it's called Dante's Divine Comedy. It's a literary masterpiece, especially for the time it was made, you know? So, for example, in Dante's Inferno, there was infinite loops of how man could descend into sin, into loops of unconscious repetition and sin. And then there was, in some sense, the heavens, where it was as if it was the unfathomable infinite freedom, you know? So anytime we have felt like there's infinite freedom, what a heavenly moment, you know? Those moments where there has been infinite absence of freedom, or you can say, I don't know, there's some moments that repeat. If you get bored with your desire, the easiest way to get detached from your desires is to get bored with them. Is to realize what is the value. You know, when I wake up in the day, I'm like, oh my God, it's like the yogic perspective suggests to be detached from the world that you're in. You're walking in this temporary illusion of a world. But then I'm like, the whole point of survival is a desire. That means it's like you're desiring to continue existing in this plane of existence. You know, that's how we've been getting, that's how we are here. You know, that means we are expert continuers, if I can create that term. In the chat section, you think says all for one for all. I will tell you that's what I meant by them being seasons. That's why I called them Ring of the Absent Heaven. Honk says we perceive light that moves at the speed of light. We perceive light that moves at the speed of light. I honestly, personally feel light is it's like of course, scientifically, it's the smallest energy carrier system. Light. So light is not just light; it's also carrying something. You know, for me, it's strange. It's as if imagine light was like gum, like it was like it was gum, and the gum hits something and imprints off what it hits. Get touched to it, and the light enters our eyes. That means I was fascinated that so many people entertain the notion of light entering their eyes, but not realizing the light is touching things. It's reflecting. What a reflection means is that the information was managed to be redirected. So reflective moments are of life is moments where the person instantly realizes it's not them, it's like a process, you know? It's like suddenly realizing the planet is not stationary. A person can sit and think they're as still as they want, but there is nothing as pure stillness. The universe's animate meaning is being defined by the sense that it is moving. We are in motion. That means the universe is set in motion, so technically all mindsets are motion. That means what we have thought is knowledge is just us studying movement. We're riding on a horse we cannot see and we're having beliefs about it, not realizing it's just an event, you know? It's like this person went to a horse and was like, "Horse, what's your meaning? What's your purpose? Why do you exist?" And the enlightened horse said, imagine the horse turns around, not enlightened, the horse turns around to the guy, he's like, "Buddy, maybe you should, this saddle that's on my back, maybe you should ride this," right? So what I'm telling you is imagine the world is a metaphor for the horse, and the person asking the horse what's the meaning of the horse is like, what's the purpose of the horse is like the self. So when we ask what is the purpose of the world, it is to ride the waves of this existence. It's cool. It's like you're in a wonderland, you know, or you're like on a water theme park. It's like, what can you do in a water theme park? Does it matter what you believe or disbelieve? No, you just get on the slide. You get in, you engage the experience, and you don't disconnect from life experientially just because the right ideas haven't found you or the world hasn't found the proper way to look at you. When I think about life, I notice it is alive before I think. Hence my pure allegiance to the unknown potential of this world. Your decision decides if you step into the hell of the moment or the heaven, if you see the efficient or the inefficient. Because there are some people I've seen in religious culture, pretty much like the way that people see religion in the world, I've noticed they have noticed the extreme actions. But religion also provides a very strange psychology. As a person being in raised in Iran and having lived there some years of my life, I could tell you that religion is strange. It's like an invisible participation in how the world event is defined, you know? So in religious psychology, it's as if I could tell you, I see this in my 80-year-old grandmother, getting close to 80 grandmother. She is she's an old woman who she married young, and she had kids, and her whole life she has just lived in the house. Do you know? When I see her, it's as if in of course Eastern cultures. I mean, what you can say, feminism is very it exists as a factor in Western cultures. There's many Eastern cultures I could tell you that it's as if men do not even see women. And it's strange because the women allow the men to do that, because the women want the men. The man's victory is the woman's victory. You see? History is known to have queens that have made kings into normal men, and queens that have made normal men into kings. That's the beautiful thing about the archetype of the queen, that it is royal before the king has emerged, you know? That means the most honorable thing a human being can do on this planet is to stop doing anything for one moment and bow. Bow at the Gaian mind. Bow at the planet that has welcomed you into its design, into its grid. When will a gratefulness be found that is full of greatness? Why is it easier for man to see absence than fullness? Because absence is the norm. There's a feeling that I'm very happy in my life that I managed to resolve it well, you know, and it was the feeling of an artificial pull. Do you know what that means? That means you're a person, imagine, who's not thirsty, and suddenly everybody in the environment is like, hey man, drink this cup of water, drink this cup of water, you know? And so the young child goes into environments like this, and what happens is that the child, if the moment you listen to the will of something outside of your experience, you have been possessed by the other. That means some people saw enlightenment as just, you know, love all the time. Really, if it was that easy. If the world loved itself, then it would never break. So it's that we are misinterpreting hate and standing in artificial love. The soul is of the nature of the lion. It is designed to at times burst, at times roar. And it can only do that if it stops fighting the world to get to see what self it can be. You know, Lao Tzu says, Confucius's guru, pretty much, you know, Confucius's mentor. He says, we have to let go of who we are now to become who we are meant to. And if you have to let go to become, what has there ever been to fear? You attain victory by finding the state where the world, where the witness never lost itself in the world. Freedom is like a roar that the lion is already doing. It just has to hear. It just has to hear the opportunity, the 4 billion-year-old evolutionary opportunity, you know? One thing is for certain, 100%. The purpose of humanity is not to be silent. We have not been designed with mouths to just be quiet. You know, that's like the speech has a momentum, has an evolutionary, it's like an evolutionary puzzle piece. And guys, keep in mind something in the chat section. As I'm giving the talk, if you write too much, I can't read it. So I would encourage just like any question, any comment the person wants me to engage, put MW caps in front of it. And then I'll make sure throughout the whole talk, I'll get to all those comments and anything that's a comment. Anyways. You know, humans are the coolest thing this universe has produced, you know. That means I remember when I was younger in there was no I never felt cool like in public. You know, there was never analysis like that even. But I could tell you there's moments where I've been in nature and I've seen like you know a squirrel or just like a birds or something, and I've just been to myself, yeah, you know, I'm definitely cooler than these birds, you know. So, anyways, guys, let me fly back to the topic. Honestly, I'm just a person who realizes life is like a candle. The body is biological, like the candle wax. The mind is like the flame of the candle. The cosmos is a dark, vast, endless darkness. So our conscious minds are illuminating the moment with intelligence. Therefore, intelligence is something that is being added to the moment. And we're all wondering about the channel, the valve, how this is emerging. And so we have acknowledged the void, which is something that we shouldn't fear. We should find a way to integrate into our culture. That means there's moments, imagine, where if the like it's like this may be too casual of me to say, of course, and I'm saying it with complete respect for the life force, but imagine that when a person was about to pass away, their last words were like, all right guys, I'm done with the universe, see you in the Voidverse. The guy leaves his body consciously, imagine. You know, there's stories of this caliber in Sufism. In Sufism, I think this was a story of from the life of a young Hafiz. I think it's a story attributed to Hafiz Shirazi. And Hafiz, let's say it was Hafiz, but you could just see it as like a Sufi practitioner back in the day, a Sufi, a person wondering about the pearl, the truth of the world. So the story is there's this kid in a market who's arguing with a much more older Sufi who's in the market, you know, and they're speaking about truth, and they suddenly their discussion goes back in the day about free will, and this young man says nobody can know their death, nobody can die, you know, nobody can choose their death. It's like birth. Keep in mind, guys, this is a story from 700 years ago. So this story is very, very old. So it's not really like we can't really properly even understand the story from our current culture. But anyways, I'll share it. So the kid says to this, like, imagine it's a market, a bunch of people are there, you know, and this old man says, what are you saying, kid? That's not the case. There is a conscious living reality. It's as if there is a free will here. But this free will is not free will. It's kind of poetically the universal will through the individual, you know? Now, what happens is this elder Sufi looks at this kid and says, it can be done. And he says, I'll show you. And something so bizarre happens in the market there in this story, where this old man goes and the kid is there. And he's like, what do you mean? You can't. You know, how can you? It's not possible. Nobody knows this, as if consciously. It's pretty much they were debating Mahasamadhi, but in a Sufi culture. Sorry guys, I'll continue the story. The Sufi, the kids there watching this old man, he has a cylindrical like wool hat, back in the day they had. He puts it on the right side of his head. He puts the cylindrical hat onto the wall. He literally stands like a rake, so as if the hat is keeping him from his head touching the wall. He closes his eyes, and then he takes a deep inhale, and he leaves. And this kid is there watching, and the guy is just frozen there. And people in the market go and realize the guy's not alive anymore. And so it was this sort of very strange notion where, as if we have the capacity as attention, as perhaps attributeless attention, or as the Yoga Patanjali Sutras would say, a glass orb moving over different colored surfaces, a glass orb of a witness moving through the Voidverse, Universe, Dualiverse, Infiniverse. I thought about it one day, like how incredible would it look like if the sky was like a mirror. And when we looked at a pond that had settled, we would see an infinite reflection of worlds. Do you know? Like I thought about it, like it's kind of like, but on another level, like I think it's pretty, like I'm glad it's also not like that, because it would really be too much processing, too much, reflective, symmetry-based processing, The candle flame is now in the Dualiverse asking, what do I do? What is the meaning of this life? What is the universe doing with itself? This is where, in the Dualiverse, life at best can be perceived as a rare opportunity. That's the greatest motivation. It's an opportunity. But in the Infiniverse, it would be the evolution of a skill and the surpassing of the witness. So if we say Dualiverse is like the evolution of the Voidverse and the universe, it's like the update, we can say the Infiniverse will be an incredible ability to be a dualistic being, to be a singular being, and to be a void being as the witness. So in the Infiniverse is a culture where we are all invisible witnesses in. We haven't reached there as a civilization yet. We haven't reached a civilization where there's an infiniverse state of mind. That means nobody is lacking. That means even if the person doesn't have anything, they're not in their inner realms lacking. Everything is treated infinite. That means there's no shame to infinite advancement. Because sometimes in this world, if you don't forgive yourself and then run to assist the world, it's like you can't wait for others to, in some sense, forgive you. Because even if you wait for the forgiveness of another, it's you who has to move. Your attention is like a lightsaber your whole body is holding. And you can wield your attention, You can use it to carve bread, a loaf of bread, with a lightsaber. I pretty much see chefs being like that in the future, slicing butter like a Jedi. The Infiniverse would be a truly advanced time. It would be a time where nobody is lacking. The concepts of depression, stress, suffering, pain, weakness, they have become archaeological level. They have become forgotten. That means we found such a better way to live that we stopped interpreting our own suffering. Rather, we changed the way the mind was defining itself. That means who can see your eyes to really know you? I'm a person, if you notice when I speak, I realize, holy shit, I'm speaking to a global audience, so what do? And then I was like, I just draw my own paintings, and if people care to, just as I'm drawing them, look from the side and see what I'm drawing, then it's fine. So what I mean by this is, I have been, in a strange way in this life, karmically scolded by by the door where all keys are trying to open. And I can tell you this, that more important than intellectual skill is to be a human being while you're being one. That's the privilege of the lifetime. That means I realized something hilarious, that anytime you run after complexity, you don't feel you deserve it, because you have to look at the simplicity first. There was this story, this ancient story, and in this story what happens, I mean, not that ancient, I mean, when housing was like established as a proper technology, brick houses, you can say. Do you imagine when the early times when people started to make brick houses, you know? When bricks began developing, you know, that was like as profound and sophisticated, like the Lego mindset that we see children playing with Lego. That was an evolutionary leap when we figured out we can build things with smaller things. You know, that was like a very, like, oh my God, moment of evolution. You know, if I sometimes think like, if I had an audience with the ultimate intelligent truth of this universe, I would ask it, why haven't you explained, or I would say, can you explain to your creation why you created them? And imagine God would respond, like a voice, a heavenly voice would respond and say, why? So the creation is asking the creator. Imagine we create some hypothetical thought experiment right now. The creator, a person suddenly has found the voice of God, and is asking God, can you explain to your creation why you created them? Now the creator looks at him and says, why do I need to explain what is flawless? Do you know? That means we may think this world is good or bad, but the designer never thinks. I mean, like, if you've ever designed anything, you know, it's like a part of you in the design. So you have an ultimate allegiance to it, you know? This father, he sees that he has this fat son, right? And he's like, this fat son's just staying home. He isn't doing anything. And this is back in a time where there was no video games. There was nothing. It was just a kid who was just staying at home. He was literally sitting on a chair all day, you know? And so the father's like, you know, my fat son, you know, you got to go work. What is this? You know? And the son's like, I don't want to, like something like that. And what happens is that the father says, when I come back at home at night, you have to show me what you earned, you know? And the fat son's just like, I don't know, eating like corn. Not even conscious he's in the room, you know? Just chewing corn like an unconscious process, you know? Sometimes you could say eating is very mechanical. That's why when I eat, I try to eat quickly and stop eating after. You know, not stay too long eating. It's like if there's something about it that it's like literally, yeah, artificial intelligence. And people tell me, like, since my childhood, I would be a very fast eater. I don't know if that's something to glorify really, but the fat son says okay unconsciously. And the father goes and comes back, and the mother saw this fat son, you know. The mother comes in, if I remember correctly, the mother comes and gives guys, this story was told to me like 12 years ago or something. You know, it was told to me a while back. But anyways, the mother gives the kid money. What happens is the father comes home, and the father says, "Son, where's the thing?" And they have to have this fireplace. And what happens is the kid gets the father gets the money from the kid, and the father throws the money in the fireplace, and the kid just stares at it. And the father sees the kid has no reaction, you know. And the father shouts, "Go and work, kid! Go and work!" You know. The same thing happens, and then the father realizes what the mother is doing, tells the mother to stop. He's like, "No, you got to stop." You know, it's like, tells the mother to go watch the movie 300 as parenting advice, you know. And so what happens is the kid has no option, this fat kid. And what happens is he leaves. He leaves and he has to go, and he walks, and he's walking in this village. He sees there's a stable. He sees there's like a blacksmith or whatever. And he's just walking, and as he's walking by this person who's building a wall, the person is on the wall, and he shouts to the kid, "Hey kid, throw me that brick." Just randomly. And the kid is walking there, and the kid picks up the brick and throws it to the person. And then he's like, "Throw me the brick again." And the kid just helps this guy. The kid is just unconscious, just a simple mind, you know, just dwelling. And so he just keeps giving these things, and he helps this guy. He's just, for a second, it's not about good, bad, gain, or loss. It's just about building in the moment, helping to build the moment. And so, a hard day's work, the kid ends up building half a house. He helps this guy build a house. 2 people built half a house back in the day. You know, and the guy's like, you know, it's like, "Thanks, kid, you know, see you here tomorrow." And he throws some coins to the kid. The kid goes home, and he's feeling different. He's feeling as if by working, different dimensions of the universe opened up to him. Do you know, as if his life changed. He now sees the world differently, you know. And the kid goes home, and he's just resting there, and he doesn't feel hungry. Even though he's worked all day, he doesn't feel hungry. He doesn't feel he needs to fill up the moment with something. The father comes home. The father comes home, and he's like, "Son!" And the son just stands up calmly. He's tired, you know. And he goes to the father, and the father says, "Show me what you made." You know, and the son just takes out the coins. He wasn't even thinking about the coins all day. He had forgotten about them, even in his pocket. He takes them out and gives it to the father. You know, he hadn't forgotten about them in the pocket, because when you actually walk home from work, you are aware of what you're packing. Like what's in your, you know what I mean? What's in your pocket. So, so everybody has pocket awareness. You know, that's basic. So he was aware, but yet, I'm just telling you, it was probably like, anyways, let me not get too carried away. He takes the coins, he looks at him, the kid, he looks at the coins, the money he made, and he just smiles. And he gives the coins to the father. The father takes the coins and instantly moves his hand as if he's throwing it about in the fireplace. And unexpectedly, like a martial artist, this fat kid instantly runs and holds the father's hand. He's like, "Stop, don't." And the father smiles, and he's like, "Now you've worked." You know, now you've worked because now you know what your energy went to and what it became. You know, you see what I mean? That's the thing about life. That's what I mean. It's like a horse we have to ride to the end. As far as I'm concerned, the human species is like a sort of incredible warrior dash designer species, all on horses, like cavalry riding in unknown fields. We're all riding, like 8 billion people are riding just forward into time, you know? If we were to expand the idea of the topic and say that the Voidverse, there is no inner outer. The universe, there is only the inner. The Dualiverse, there is the inner and outer. The Infiniverse is where there is no inner and outer because it is inconceivable. It's like the faster something moves, the less you can perceive it clearly. You know? So as we get closer to the speed of light, time slows down because visually we don't see change that in the same way. Anyways, guys, I would say wonder about your realm. This episode was just me as one human being in a universe of a billion trillion stars, and we can't even see the edge of the universe, and we can't even see the edge of the inner universe as well. Let us be a species that mastered emptiness, mastered the zero dimension. We were comfortable with space. We did not fear it or love it or be attached or detached. We could understand it. We could function through it. And then we have the universe where we find our physical body to be. So the body is experiencing a sort of elemental composition. So if particles have to, imagine particles all joining together to become one complex, bigger particle. Now imagine each of those particles was in its own dimensions. So imagine a particle that is like the center of a bunch of circles where the lines are met. You know? So I'm telling you that Aristotle says it's the sign of an educated mind to entertain an idea without accepting it. Socrates says the only true knowledge is to know that you know nothing. The purpose of a known self in an unknown universe is exploration, infinite exploration. We will feel like infinite beings if we advance infinitely. We just need to get a taste of collective victory as an advanced civilization. You know, just some parts of the world have to just step it up, and suddenly the whole system steps up. You know, it's always like that. You know, you stand up and you experience the atmosphere of your moment. You know. Because what you love, believe it or not, you can also, you don't fear in love. In a state of love, there is no fear. You know? Of course, I mean, Alan Watts spoke about a spectrum of love, so love isn't just one man's voice, but it's, you can say, we are efforts of energy. We are energy that has become conscious of itself. How cool is that? We are the evolution of an object into a subject to itself. How cool is that? We are the evolution of a bewildered, suffering beast on a rock in the middle of nowhere to the greatest expansion of the rising of the inner kingdoms. What that means is, yes, it's super empty in this universe. If you look at the universe, the Dualiverse, it's not empty, but it's still meaningless, but it's meaningless as motion. In the Infiniverse, that is where the advanced civilization, that is the soil where the greatest efforts of the next couple thousand years, I was just very casually, the next couple thousand years, I'm pretty sure this is gonna happen. Hopefully 312 will be the end of individual suffering. 2312. That's when suffering will no longer be applicable to the human being. Not just in the inner realms, even in the outer realms. But of course, you know, a man can dream. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. This episode, you might not believe it, but this is one of the most important episodes of my life. One of the most important talks. And I don't know how the people in the world will see it, you know, as I see myself at least, just like a blue jay on a branch, just witnessing witnessing the big, but noticing how the small has become the big. And the big will one day become small. And so what power? What control? It's just creaturehood. And to allow the mind to breathe is the greatest privilege. That means, did you know every person on the planet who is being a dictator right now? Did you know if they changed their mind in an instant, they would become the opposite? Because imagine it was, you see, chaos catapults into order. The Dualiverse is where language lives. The universe is where the body lives. The Dualiverse is where the mind lives. The Voidverse is where the soul has never moved, and the Infiniverse is the soul's it's like the most it's the evolution of the conscious experience of speed. Or generation, maybe that's a better word to use. That means imagine an artist that is drawing so fast you can't even see how they're drawing. That's the Infiniverse. A humanity that has realized it deserves its own advanced eyes. You know, they would say, what is self-realization? They would say self-realization is this, that there is a world here before you open your eyes, and you are a phenomena of this world. So when you come to look at your nature, you're technically looking at the nature of the world. You suddenly notice that there's a mind receiving it all. You notice your inner realms. As you notice your inner realms, you instantly, this is where I would say this is up to nirvikalpa samadhi. So any being who becomes conscious of duality, it's like whatever happens in reality, you will always move on towards the Infiniverse. Unless you consciously choose to go to the Voidverse. But it's like even oneness is like, is where there is still no meaning. The Dualiverse is where there's meaning. The Infiniverse is the fastest movement of the meaning, evolution of the greatest velocity of meaning. And what happens to an artist that is drawing so fast on a piece of paper? The paper catches on fire. So the Infiniverse is where the individual archetypes evaporate and a new conscious advanced human being is ushered in. A humanity where the person is honored by the inner realms, not dishonored. You know, did you know depression, it can be just because of how you performed through the day? Or it could be because of how you performed in one day and the event is still lingering in your attention, as if the person hasn't realized, I deserve inner peace, but not the I. That when you go within, that it is only peace. The watcher is there. The strength of your presence is the witnessing watcher within. You realize that, it's like, what, teacher? What teaching? You know, it's like you'll laugh at a mirror that could never break. So thanks for listening, guys. I'll see you on Discord. Blessings. And of course, I gotta maybe end it off from this. The ring of the absent heaven for now is on the finger of unknown truth. And there is ways where the ring can be taken off, and that is a sort of ultimatum to clarity. And there's ways where the person realizes it doesn't matter if the ring is on or off. It was never about just this. And there is mysteries beyond the language of mankind. And what I feel is a poet is a language is like these giant walls, like this giant kingdom, and a poet is climbing these walls to see what the other side is. They're trying to expand the expressionism of human meaning by surpassing the current language's limits. You pretty much climb the wall, and as you fall to the other side, you are actually being reborn. But it really depends on how big the wall is. So thanks for listening, guys. See you on Discord. Listen.